Great. Now let's go to September. September was a very interesting month. Lots of bad things happened. Maybe not as bad as October, but certainly several stuff on the front of illegal immigration, censorship, and also you could say some rewriting of history or revisionism took place. Now, one thing to note is that you remember the Russell Brand allegations? Several women, I think it was 4 of them, were contacted by the Times, I think Times, Sunday Times, and then there were independent media outlets who were conducting investigations about Russell Brand and his alleged misconduct in the past, especially in the period between 2006 2013. Do you remember these accusations?
Not really, to be honest. There's a lot. It seems to happen a lot, doesn't it? Where there's some guy who was like, man, he's evil, he's done stuff. But because you're never actually able to pin down exactly what he did, like with Epstein, he raped kids. Like, I know this, you don't forget about it, but when it's someone like Russell Brand, it's like, what did he do exactly? I don't remember. I have no idea.
So basically, the interesting, let's say, exchange was this one, where you could read, basically, there is an alleged witness or an alleged victim called Nadia. Nadia is a nickname. It's an alias. It's not the real name. Sorry, I don't know if an alias is used to be in a pejorative sense. I don't mean it in that way if it is. Anyway, so they had this, and apparently this was enough to trigger an investigation into him. But what was interesting was that, if you remember, there was the way that it was presented was again very political. You remember all front pages were saying Russell Brand accused of rape, Russell Brand accused of sexual misconduct, things like that. But it was interesting because they portrayed him as, a figure of the right wing. Whereas I think that in that period between 2006 and 2013, he wasn't right wing at all. He was way more left wing.
Well, he's still not. I mean, he might be a pro-free speech person, but as I understand it, he quite likes the thought of Noam Chomsky. I think he's still a Bernie bro.
Yeah.
So there's elements of what he does which is sort of centrist or right-leaning or based or whatever you want to say, but mostly he's still a lefty.
He just doesn't want all of us thrown in prison for what we think currently.
Right, yeah.
That should be the default.
Yeah.
And he was also seen as a critic of Big Pharma. That is one of the reasons why many allege that he was accused. He denied, and let's see where it goes, because this is going to be one of those stories where it's going to drag for a long time. Now, do you remember what happened in Lampedusa?
Oh, one last thing, sorry, before we move on from Russell Brand. Again, we're recording this in early December.
Yeah.
He has not been charged. There's no trial coming. He doesn't seem to have been charged with anything, as far as I can tell. So that tells you a lot. I mean, it might come further down the line that he is in fact charged and brought before a criminal court. But so far, months later, nothing's come of it.
I don't know, but I remember that people from all across the spectrum were rushing in to say he did it or he didn't do it.
Yeah.
Whereas I think it's important to believe in the rule of law.
Right,
even if sometimes it doesn't function properly. It's the only thing we have in order for society to not disintegrate into chaos. Now, do you remember Lampedusa? Speaking of societies disintegrating into chaos or being threatened to disintegrate into chaos. So Lampedusa is a small Italian island with around 6,000 people, and it had a flux of...
Don't worry about it. Basically, there was just loads of people invading the island for 20 years.
This is from The Guardian, which is describing it as a humanitarian crisis as opposed to an illegal invasion. And it says at least 11,000 people reached the island in boats over 4 days, with a peak of 5,000 only on September 12th. So imagine you're in a geographical region and you have close to, let's say, close to 200% of your population migrate into the island. This is basically, it's not that these people went to Lampedusa. Lampedusa just lost its character.
I think it's been like this ever since NATO got rid of General Gaddafi.
Yeah.
Just ever since Libya fell into that, Lampedusa has just been living in hell.
And we have pictures here from Lampedusa.
Yeah.
And it
This is
just
normal.
shows that
This is how life should be. Everyone in Lampedusa actually wants their economy to function off tourism, but of course it's never going to whilst this continues.
well,
I mean, it's a true invasion. There's no way you
Look at all
can't
those
use
women.
the word invasion. That's an
Yeah.
invasion.
Look at the women, though.
and
Should we play
kids,
spot the woman? Should
and
we
the
play
kids.
spot the woman, actually? No,
And-
sincerely, like actually try and spot a woman.
Yeah. And this was one of the reasons why Giorgia Meloni was criticized a lot by people from the right, because they thought that her response to this was not what she promised and not what it should have been. Now let's move forward. Migration, not in Europe, but also into the US. Let's just look at a story because it happened. Tensions flare over migrants in New York City. Staten Island protesters are arrested while trying to stop buses carrying asylum seekers to shelter as they yell, "Take them back." Now, what is interesting here, because it happens all the time in a sense, but it says over 110,000 asylum seekers have arrived in New York City since the spring of 2022, with over currently 10,000 arriving every month. This was an incident where you could see some internal Democrat blame gaming. They were blaming each other. So you had the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, blaming Biden and the federal government. The federal government did nothing. Ocasio-Cortez blamed U.S. foreign policy decades back. It was just a blame game. But it's interesting because it shows that a lot of the times the Democrats are showing solidarity with other people's neighborhoods when it comes to the issue. And it was an interesting thing to note.
Was that where there was like quite literally an angry mob sort of chanting and shouting over AOC while she was trying to tell them that this is normal and you should just suck it up? And,
I don't remember, to be honest. I can't give you an honest answer here. I don't remember.
That did end up happening one way or another.
I think that she does have this effect on crowds. Anyway, yeah. We have here Eric Adams slams Joe Biden again over New York City's migrant crisis as the president refuses to meet mayor while in town for the UN assembly. Now, a lot of things happened when it comes to GB News. Do you remember what happened to GB News?
They fired some of their hosts because they wouldn't fuck a woman.
So we have Calvin.
That's actually what happened, though.
Are you allowed to say the F-bomb?
I'm sorry, but I hate this story so much. Where literally all that happened is they went, "I won't have sex with her," and the entire political establishment of the UK went, "How could you say that?" I mean, the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown was wheeled out on Sky News to be like, "I would have sex with her," and it's just like, what the hell is this? This is a real discussion we're having. And then Calvin ended up losing his job because he also agreed he wouldn't have sex with her.
But wasn't the whole take, because I don't watch much of GB News. I like Neil Oliver. Neil Oliver's great. I quite like that Christie's fella. He's quite good. But most of GB News I don't watch. Like the vast majority of it I don't watch. But wasn't the whole thing that the woman involved, that she always used that angle?
Yeah.
If anyone tried to attack her, she'd be
I
like,
wouldn't have sex with you, though. You're an ugly man.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, we won't have sex with you. You're an ugly
So
woman.
Lawrence Fox was actually only trying to throw that back in her face, essentially.
Yeah.
Right? That's what was really happening.
And GB News pissed their own pants.
Yeah.
Because a bunch of Labourites pissed their pants. I was like, you could have just told them to go screw themselves.
Who's the owner of GB News again? Or the top dog, the Greek dude?
Frangolopoulos.
Yeah, him. Yeah. So it would have been nice if he'd shown some... do you know it, Stelios? How he actually say it?
I don't remember the name, but can you show me? I'll tell you.
I don't know off the top of my head. I'll look it up real quick.
Yeah.
But it would have been good if he could have shown a bit of gumption there, bit of leadership, bit of balls, really. It seems a shame that he's just capitulated effectively.
So essentially what happened is that Lawrence Fox said that he wouldn't have sexual relations with that woman. And a lot of leftists there started saying that this is unacceptable. She said also that she felt physically sick. Anyway,
did she? Oh, no.
Lawrence Fox said that
have sex with me.
She felt uncomfortable.
Lawrence Fox said that on Dan Wootton's show.
Yeah.
And there was according to Calvin, there was someone there who texted, I think her. She's saying they said this about you. Watch it, go and watch it, and that's when the whole thing erupted.
Clearly, I got sent into a Labour MP group chat.
Yes.
Because every Labour MP tweeted about it the next hour.
Yeah.
It was like, Yeah, that's organic.
And essentially, what happened was that Lawrence Fox was fired. Dan Wooden was fired after a bit, and Calvin basically said that if GB News is not to become just another mainstream media outlet, it has to have a serious stance on free speech. And that reaction, for that he was fired. So you can watch his account of the events here in podcast 757. This was on the 6th of October, but I'm not stealing from my whoever does October, because these are events that happened in September. Now, another Agelos Fragopoulos. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Now, I'm puzzled about English history. I want your help here, okay? Because basically you are the person to ask.
Okay, yeah.
Who built Stonehenge?
Well, there are many sit back, Harry. I got this. I got you, bro. Do you really want to know? Very, very quickly. There's a few layers to it. It was built over more than a millennia. So the original builders were sort of Bell Beaker era peoples, Neolithic Stone Age, the late Neolithic peoples, and the latest bits of it are much, much, much later than that. Oh, right. I say so. Not sub-Saharan black people though.
Okay, so there was the BBBH book by Atinuke called Brilliant British History. That is a new children's history book that says basically things like
new history.
Every single British person comes from a migrant, but the very first Britons were black. And anyway, Stonehenge was built by black Britons. And let us look at this here, because I found this. If we can click here in the pictures, this
is the Tariq Nasheed level.
This one.
Story.
I think this has to do with the Stuarts. Is this an accurate depiction of the Stuarts?
Wow.
I mean, it really is actually Tariq Nasheed.
Wow.
Suleiman was black. The Japanese, they was Ethiopians crossing over from Korea. Just like,
the thing is,
what do you do with that?
From our point of view, of course, that's absurd.
They think that's real.
Yeah. So from our point of view, it's both funny, it's annoying and funny.
Yeah.
But from their point of view, how can they think, yes, we're winning? Like, this is a win for us. Or
that truth has been discovered.
Yeah.
Like, they actually think that's what England looked like.
And there's the other sort of extremely odd contradiction that they also think that Britain is sort of intrinsically, systemically racist and bigoted, and that all empire is evil and all that. But they're also responsible for it as well, though. It just makes no sense whatsoever. It's true madness on a few different levels, right? To do that. So revisionist history.
Sorry, I just want to also look at the Vikings over here. This is before, so when a few had come, and then by the time of the Stuarts, 100% of the British population were black, and then something happened. I don't know.
That's so. If they're saying the Stonehenge era people were black, then why weren't they black the whole time? Why are they sort of?
I don't know. We'll go back further in history.
Look at the Romans.
Black, but if the Celts are white, who built Stonehenge? Just are we missing it?
I mean, the original builders of Stonehenge, the late Neolithic peoples, they were long before the Celts.
Yeah.
Okay. So, there were black people. Then the Celts came, killed them all.
But it's also fun because
I'm sorry, but it's mad.
It's also fun because it says basically that the West is inherently racist and whiteist or something. And look at the depiction of the Romans.
Yeah. The thing is, because the Romans did invade and conquer North Africa.
Yeah.
But of course, the North African people aren't sub-Saharan black people.
Kind of what sub-Saharan means.
Right, exactly.
Below.
Below the Sahara.
But then you can make the argument that this person, even this emperor, was African. They were African.
Yeah.
So they must look like they were from the Congo or Nigeria or something. There's one in the Tudor period. There is a painting of a sub-Saharan black person, full black person, because there was someone in one of the Tudor courts, I think maybe the Elizabethan court, can't quite remember, might be Henry VIII, where they were a minstrel or a bard of some type, and there's an oil painting, a legit painting, but they were the complete exception to the rule.
Yeah.
To such a degree. But yet, historians, revisionists, liars will say, no, look, there's a bit of evidence there that there were black people, sub-Saharan black people in Britain during the Tudor period, and therefore you can't say for sure there weren't loads of them.
Bo, do you
But
think
You can.
were there any sources written by the historian Netflixius? Was there? Was it? Anyway,
Great tone. Written
do
by
you
him.
remember? What do you think of the Canadian government and its constant claim that it can find extremism everywhere?
It's just another madness, isn't it?
Do you remember what happened? It happened in September. The scandal over a standing ovation for a Nazi veteran is now raising questions about a cemetery monument in Canada that honors his Waffen SS unit. Remember, it's Yaroslav Hunka, I think.
This is what happens when you've got an agenda and you're prepared to warp anything, including reality and the nature of history and past events and cause and effect. You're prepared to warp or lie about all of that in order to serve your one current agenda thing.
You put up the 14 Waffen SS division monuments in Canada.
So the angle is, isn't it, that we hate Russia at the moment.
Yeah.
We're pro-Ukraine and we hate Russia.
Yeah.
So anything that dunks on Russia in some way, even if it's pro-Nazi, actual Nazi, and
they had a very weird response afterwards because some of them apologized, others were trying to introduce some nuance and say that we need to remember the Holodomor and why lots of Ukrainians wanted to gain independence from Russia and things like that. But it's interesting that you see this claim from Canadian woke people, progressivists, who are constantly infatuated with finding extremism everywhere, and they were literally clapping for an ex-SS member.
If I remember rightly, he was in one of the Grenadier divisions. If I remember, I can't remember exactly, but if I recall, he was in one of the actual Waffen SS Grenadier divisions, I think, who saw loads of combat on the Eastern Front and would have been involved in probably would have been involved. Or in fact, I think that division is a little bit of nuance here. The actual Wehrmacht, the army, would go through, and it would be more police units that would round up people for the mass exterminations. It wouldn't necessarily be the Wehrmacht themselves. Well, it wasn't usually. Nonetheless, I believe the unit he was in saw lots and lots of action on the Eastern Front, and were even briefly fought on the Western Front after D-Day, I believe. Might be wrong. Hope I'm not wrong about that. In other words, I think that is right, fought against US and Canadian troops.
Yeah.
So in World War II, he was the enemy of Canada.
Yeah. But I don't have the impression that contemporary progressivists learn history.
They don't care. They didn't care about any of that, did they? It was just...
There's 4 Nazi monuments in Canada that are just up. It's not just that one. Didn't know that. Okay. This is what happens when you don't learn history, I guess.
Yeah.
Because it's all just like, oh, they were the Ukrainian army, right? And this other one is like, oh, he was just a Serb, wasn't he? It's like, no, he was not.
Now, let's move to a fun bit that happened. Do you know Ibram X. Kendi? Of the anti-racist, who basically says the beautiful line. Let me say this. I have it here because, I have to read it. And he says, racism is a collection of racist policies that lead to racial inequity that are substantiated by racist ideas. That's you don't define it, mate. Anyway, so he had a
circular reasoning, isn't it?
Yeah,
there's no
circular definition.
There's no logic to
nothing.
that.
Anyway, it's a nothing burger. Do you call it?
The Americans call it that, yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's round also. It's also circular, yeah. So what happened was that his anti-racist research center got involved in a scandal where there were massive layoffs and people losing their jobs. And what happened was that he got $43 million in donations for research. And his research output wasn't particularly substantial. And people started having... let's say I go at him. I won't say I'm completely split on this because on the one hand, I think he shouldn't be anywhere near a university or anywhere near grants. But on the other hand, if you give money for research to someone who basically tells you, I know everything already, because any racial discrimination, any racial disparity is caused by racism. That is axiom. There isn't anything to research there.
Yeah.
He already tells you, I know everything. So in a way, why do you give money for research to someone who says I already know everything and there isn't anything to research? So
Especially
I'm completely split here.
Especially something in the ballpark of 40 odd million. Like, it's difficult. It's like Brewster's Millions. It's difficult to spend that amount of money. Well, where did that go? How can you spend?
It depends.
Unless you build whole buildings, right? Unless you build an entire campus of new buildings, maybe then you could spend over $40 million. Otherwise, it's...
And another thing, do you remember Black Lives Matter?
Unfortunately, I do remember.
So there was one of its organizers admitted fraud after £30,000 raised from donors went missing. So it's Zara Salim, 23, pleaded guilty to one count of fraud by abuse of position. And if you see
I was on that one that day.
Yeah.
I was on the podcast that day,
Yeah.
Yeah, complete fraud.
Yeah.
A despicable human being.
Yes. And now let's end with on a funny note. And this is a bit esoteric, but Carl went on holiday and we had the two podcasts where we talked about our series. And here is where it was myself, Dan, and Connor. And I want to end with the next one, which had Josh, you, and Harry talking about your respective series. These were two really wholesome episodes, as far as I'm concerned. And I want to just say here to end with this, I think that Harry's smile here is absolutely demonic. I think it's just really weird. Yeah. We talked with him about it. He finds it funny. Anyway, we're just having fun.
Looks pretty genuine to me.
Anyway, we were talking with Harry and we said that it is one of his most weird smiles. Anyway,
I'm wearing the same tie.
Yeah.
I've actually got quite a lot of ties, but I happen to be wearing the exact same tie there.
You keep it for special occasions.
And blazer.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's it.
If you appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com and check out the merch store. And you can check out things such as the Dirty Dirty Smear Merchant shirt, which has been brought back for a limited time. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.